I'm sorry, but Beth is the girl in a horror movie who dies first. She just is.
No, you are right. She goes where the hottie is.
But can't blame her, because, like, probably me too. Welcome back to another episode of Romancing the Monsters. I'm Am.
Hi, I'm S.
I'm Seff.
And today, we're talking about Dark Lover by J.R. Ward, a book from 2005, so we're going way back in the
When
past.
I was 10.
You were 10?
Yeah, in 2005 I was 10. I was born in 95.
How do you even know that stuff? Like, I can't math. I don't know how old I was. Anywho, Seff has read this book before.
Yes.
How many times? Was this a first reread, or you've read this?
I would say this is like my second full reread. I remember I'd read like little parts of it here and there, but like I would never pick up this book and read it from, front to back.
So did you read this book when it first came out, when you were like 10?
No, I read it.
I was like,
baby Seff, like, reading vampire smut.
No, I read this. I started the series actually when I was in high school, so that would have been, I think it was grade 9 or grade 10. And this was the series, guys, that I had to share with my mom, and I was like, Mom, you have to read the series. And I told her, like, I was the kid that I told my mom I didn't read the sex scenes, I skipped over them. And I was like, Mom,
sure.
don't worry, I skipped over the scenes. We just got to read this series.
I just love the differences between your mom and my mom, because my mom read 50 Shades of Grey first, and she was like, read this book, it's pretty good.
really?
My mom did read 50 Shades of Grey, and she did go watch the movies in theaters. But
I
yeah.
just love that my mom was pushing the smut at me, and you were telling your mom, no, I'm skipping the sex scenes, I swear. Anywho, I've read this book before as well. It was forever ago. I think it might have been 2015. And, my thoughts may or may not have changed. So we'll see about that.
Yeah.
For S, it was a first.
Yeah, first time read.
Let's
Yes.
hope it's not the last.
Well, maybe the last time for this book.
Yeah,
but hopefully
yeah.
not the last book in the series that she'll read.
We'll get into it.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, I should probably say that when I read it, I only read the first book, and then I did pick up the other ones.
Yeah.
So the next ones will be firsts for me as well.
Okay.
So, Seff, what is Dark Lover about?
All right. So we start off with this cool guy named Darius, however you want to say it, who's hoping that our main man, Rath, who's the king of, the vampire species, he was hoping that he will help his half-human daughter transition into a vampire. So this would mean giving her blood and help her through the taxing change because he's the last pure blood. So we cut to Beth, who is very much not aware of the vampire species or, like, the vampire world. And she doesn't really know what's going on. She just thinks she's overtired and things like that. So Rath decides to fulfill Darius's wish because Darius is killed that night with his car blowing up, and sadly, he doesn't ever really get to meet his daughter. Anyways, so we are also facing the Lessers, which are creatures. They're kind of like zombies. Like, they're without souls, and they were created by, I guess, a thing called the Omega, who's like the devil equivalent, and he wants to destroy his sister, the Scribe Virgin, who is like the goddess of the vampires. So there's kind of like a whole, like, I guess, glorious war going on that we have no idea that's happening. And then basically our main girl Beth is attacked and by this idiot, like, disgusting little child. who attempts to rape her, but they don't succeed and she gets away. And we also get introduced to other characters, which is Butch and Jose. And I just, like, that's their start. I just feel like there's so many things going on in the first half that you're like, what the heck? And then, anyways, we cut to Rath and Beth, and he finally meets her, I guess. He meets her, then wipes her memory because she's afraid of him, and then he,
Can you imagine, though, like, the first meet cute is so embarrassing that you're like, okay, we're gonna do this again, actually.
Yeah!
Because this ain't working right now.
yeah.
I wish we could do that in real life.
Right.
And then the second time was also kind of a mess because they kind of have sex right away. And
Yeah.
And then, it was just intense. And then she's like, what the heck? And she's afraid. And then basically she finds out that he's a suspect in these murders. There's prostitutes being murdered. And apparently his weapons match the weapons at the scene. And now she's like, shit, I just fucked a murderer. And then things happened. And then she decides to go with him to his mansion because, this girl has zero self-preservation. And then it just goes from there. She finds out she's a half vampire and her dad actually was watching over her. And then the story kind of gets started there. And that's the general premise of their story and how it started.
How did you like this book? Us? How about we start with you?
No.
Okay, I'll start and then you can go. So the first time I read this book, I liked it a lot more than I did this time around. And I think that the main reason is I don't think that this first book in the series is aging particularly well. There's a lot of things in this book that you can tell it's very much of its time, which is not like a bad thing. It's just I was preparing myself to go into this book sort of being like, okay, some of it will probably be a little bit shocking.
Yeah.
You wouldn't see that nowadays in a book.
Yes.
AKA the book pretty much starting with the sexual assault of the main female character. Because, like, yeah, sure, it didn't go all the way, but her boobs did get grabbed in, the middle of the street at night by some creepy old guys.
Yeah.
So, it was an interesting experience, if only because I was like, I really want to know what made people gravitate towards these books. And, like, what really made people excited to keep going and like
Zsadist.
Well, this is why it's great that you're here, because like you can tell us, and like I wish I could transport myself into my 2015 self, because I know that I liked the book.
Yeah.
So what was grabbing me then that's not grabbing me now, like this is what I want to know.
Yeah. All right, S.
Okay.
Oh no, she's like, I hated it. I'm gonna burn it as soon as I get off of this.
Seff, please don't hate me.
No, it's fine. This book was never my favorite. I totally...
Okay.
I'm fine with it.
So, so this is a first time read for me. I didn't like it. So I started it, and right off the bat, I'm like, no, I don't think I'm gonna like this. And I didn't. And, okay, so I guess I'll go into, like, the reasons, I guess, why. So the first one would be the constant change of point of views.
Mm-hmm.
It just, usually I'm okay with different point of views. This one, it didn't work at all. Right when I was trying to get into, right when I was getting invested with a couple, the switch of point of view happened, and I'm just like, I kind of don't care what's going on with the other characters.
Yeah.
But I know their point of views were needed for the story, I guess, for the story building and for the rest of the series. So that was it. The point of views was something that I didn't like. So I said my first reason, and then the second reason would be the writing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I felt it was fine in certain parts, but there were parts where I felt like it was really cheesy.
I could see that, to be honest.
And then the third would be I felt like there was a lot of tell and not show. But I think that can be because since it's a lot of world building, and then maybe, I don't know how it is with the rest of the series, maybe she'll show us more with the with the book. So that was a little bit where I noticed.
I think this might have been her first paranormal book.
Yeah.
So maybe this is kind of why I don't like judging a long series like that, especially when it's paranormal or fantasy based on the first book alone, because I'm aware that there's probably like the author will inevitably grow as a writer throughout the books, and the world will expand, and the writer themselves get more comfortable in their own world and stuff. So, but it's interesting because the different perspectives actually didn't bother me personally, but then again, like, I've been reading a lot of urban fantasy, and those tend to have sort of POVs like that where you don't necessarily know right off the bat why it's there, but then it eventually makes sense, type of thing.
Yeah.
But for me, I never connected with the romance. Like, I felt like there wasn't anything between these characters. Like, they meet, they fuck, and right away I'm supposed to be like, oh yeah, so much sexual tension between these two. I just wasn't feeling it at any point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was lacking a little bit.
Yeah, but I will say it definitely made me interested in some of the other characters.
Zsadist.
Particularly Zsadist.
You know what? We can agree. We can all agree on that.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Okay.
What about you, Seff?
Okay, so like I said, I read this book in high school, and I remember I was like, oh my god. This is the vampire series I wanted. Because don't forget.
This is the shit.
Yeah, don't forget. Little Sephra read Twilight, and I was like, you know what? This is good. And I read fan fiction, of course. But then I was missing the sex in my vampires. So, of course, I ended up eating this series up, and especially this book. But this book, like you said, Marge and S, I never really connected with the romance. I never really, like, connected with Beth as a character, or Rath, or, like, even Marissa, or Butch, or, you know, everyone. This book really wasn't that great in terms of, like, connecting with the characters and also buying their romance. The world building, sure, I feel like it kind of was still glossed over despite them spending a lot of time talking about, like, their high society and, like, their lessening society that they're fighting against. Like, despite them talking about it and even, like, their villain having a POV, I felt like I was not connecting as well as I thought I did reading the first time. And, I don't know, yeah, it was just, like, lacking in terms of, like you said, the romance and just character connection. And I will say, I felt like this book was more of, like, an introduction to Rath and Beth. Like, you can kind of see what the author's doing, this, like, because I've read, like, so many of the other books, and, like,
Yeah.
obviously, I don't know if it's a spoiler, but, like, these two get another book later on.
Yeah.
Oh, they do.
Is it The King?
Yeah.
Is that their book?
The King, yeah. And so, like, there, I feel like their romance is really, like, it was tested, and, like, it was an actual romance, whereas this one is more of, like, their meet cute. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, because usually, like, the character is thrown in a situation that's uncomfortable, and, like, they have to learn from this and, like, you know, get acquainted with this new position, type of thing. It ends with him starting this new thing, like, becoming the king. Like, he needs to be the king now.
Yeah.
Because of everything that happened.
Exactly.
So it's like, that feels like the beginning of something, you know, whereas the book feels like the prequel.
Yes, exactly. I was just going to say that this book felt like the prequel to the rest of the series.
Yeah.
Because, like, you see it starts to take form in Rage's book and then onwards, but then, like, it was a prequel for me. I honestly felt that 100%.
First book syndrome. I don't know. I'm surprised that you didn't like Marissa. Like, I felt for Marissa throughout this book.
I felt for her towards, like, the middle, kind of towards the end. Well, I will say that I did end up liking the book just the last 20%.
Okay.
I will say that kind of around that. No.
Never mind, it was 5%. The last 5% were good.
It was the last 2.5%, actually.
There was a moment where I did feel for Marissa, and I'm just like, this girl, she needs a happy ending. She needs something. Yeah.
I felt for her throughout the whole thing. Like, how she was treated by Rath was so, like, she was just discarded. Like, she was just only good for her blood, and that's it. Like, he didn't even want her body, and she was just pining after him because, you know, she just wanted anyone to pay attention to her. She's literally, like, invisible to these men, which Butch doesn't understand because he's like, how come no one ever sees you? You're right there. And I felt for Butch and Marissa, like, together. I was like, you know I can get behind this. You know, they're cute together.
Really?
Yeah.
That was gonna be my question.
Yeah, I like them together.
How do you guys feel about Butch?
At first, I was like, he's a little annoying.
So annoying.
But then when he was around the other brothers and like there was Marissa and everything, I was like, you know what? I think that, yeah, Butch kind of fits in with these guys. And I liked his little friendship with, who was it? Tor? No, not
Vicious.
Tor.
I think it was Vicious.
Yeah.
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 I liked it. I liked him.
Yeah.
In the end.
I'll agree. He was annoying at first, and like Marge said, I like the progress with their friendship, how that progressed, I guess.
Yeah.
And then with him and Marissa.
No, I have nothing else to say about that.
Sorry, she hates him. Well, I mean, I will say, like, I like how J.R. Ward wasn't afraid of making her characters a little bit gritty in the sense that, like, Butch, you know, he goes to prostitutes, which there's nothing wrong with that.
No, of course not.
You know, he goes to prostitutes. He's, you know, a little bit darker. Rath is kind of like treats Marissa like she's, you know, there and gone. Like,
Yeah.
he doesn't care. Like, I kind of appreciated that, like, she wasn't trying to make all these characters, like, squeaky clean, you know?
Oh,
like, they've
yeah.
all done things. You know, Zsadist's reputation with women it's something, to be
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I liked that aspect of it. Like, it felt a little bit grittier.
No, and I honestly, like, I agree with that, and I like that Rath, like, recognized his bad behavior with Marissa and even, like, went to apologize to her. I really appreciated that, despite, you know, obviously us not being able to understand it because it was in Butch's POV, I think, at that time. But I really liked that he learned how to treat a woman right, and he realized what he did to Marissa was so wrong, and he went and apologized. I felt like that was a really good step on his part.
And there was no animosity between, there was no, like, I didn't feel any type of anger between Marissa and Beth, which I really appreciated, because 2005 was a rough year when it came to women on women crimes.
It was, hella rough.
But I liked how Marissa was just like, you know what, Rath found a woman, and that woman ain't me, and you know what, I got this other man who's actually interested in me, and I'm happy for Rath and Beth. And I was like, yes, girl, this is the way.
Yeah.
So I did appreciate that.
Yeah.
Do they get their own book?
Butch and Marissa, yeah, they're book 4. So I guess that's a spoiler in the sense where, like,
no, it's not. I mean, it's pretty obvious. It's surprising though that Zadist's book comes before theirs when they're set up and almost like,
because, like, I believe things have to happen before that happens. Going back to the multiple POVs, so like, I feel like the POVs are needed because you need to know their situation before their book. Because I feel like this series as a whole is very cohesive, and, like, you can't just pick up a random book in the series and read it, because then you'll be, like, really confused. Like, you can't even pick up Z's book because you'll be so confused, because a lot of events that set up that book happens in book 2. You need to be able to read them, like, all books prior to the one that you want to read in order to continue going, because, yeah, she just does a good job of, like, weaving in the story and, like, making them all connect to the point where, like, you can't just pick up a random book.
it's interesting though that, like, it's not just the characters that you can tell are gonna get books. It's like the villain gets a POV.
Yeah.
That's a first. And I wonder why she made that decision. Like, does it add anything to the book for you? Does it take away from the book because you kind of know what's happening in the background before it happens? Like, does it kill the suspense, I guess, because you know?
To be quite honest, I think I would have forgotten that they were fighting anything or they have a villain if it wasn't for the POVs.
Interesting.
Yeah, because I don't feel like in the first book, at least, she didn't set up the intensity or, like, the constant combat, like, as well as it could have been in terms of, like, really cementing the villain. And I think the Mr. X's POVs really helped do that, because we got background info on, like, him, the species, as well as, like, their creator, the Omega. And I feel like that's the only way we would have maybe gotten to know anything about the Omega.
I can see that.
How did you guys feel about Havers' character and his character journey so far? S is just like, who?
No thoughts. Head empty.
The doctor!
Marissa's brother.
Yeah, I kind of don't care. Didn't really care for his point of view.
I was really just getting like pathetic vibes. Like he was just really pathetic to me.
I don't know, because like for most of the book I was like, why are you here? But I did ultimately like where it led. Like I did like that Marissa was like had to stand up and like protect these people. Like she was kind of given a role, a more important role through that subplot, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Of like stopping her brother and being like, no, this is not right. Like you're gonna regret this type of thing. And then for Rath to ultimately be like, I'm gonna forgive you for this because I understand vengeance, and I understand that it wasn't coming from your hatred of us as much as it was coming from your hatred of what was going on with your sister type of thing, and you were just trying to avenge what had happened to her. So I like where it led.
Yeah. And I do think his POV, while like, to be honest, it wasn't quite necessary, I do think it did provide us with some insight on like their species, and like you kind of recognize that vampires are kind of like really valuable, is that the word? Where like if they don't have the females, they're just gonna die, and like their species, like the female species, is dwindling at this point, and like he's really trying to find another way to sustain the vampires because of like everyone dying and like they're being massacred by the lesser. So I felt like that was kind of interesting on like that side of things. I don't really remember at all his POV in the first book because I would skip his scenes anytime I would read it.
Okay, I have a slightly spoilery question.
Okay.
So we said this book, very 2005.
Yeah.
Males can only drink from females because, God forbid, male on male action.
Yeah.
I know that there is a book later on in the series. So, like, how does she go back on that whole thing? Like, how is that gonna work?
I mean, as you know, I'm gonna have to use her favorite 2 words and just say keep reading.
Oh, okay. So it does get explained how that pairing is gonna work.
I will say you meet the couple. I think in book 2 or 3.
Oh wow. Okay,
yeah, you meet them
on.
pretty early. Like they're like I love them, but like they struggle so hard. I love them though. They were great.
That's interesting. So I think maybe they'll probably have, I'm just going to throw it out there, they probably have their women to drink out of and then be with each other. No?
That's me shrugging. Listeners, that was me shrugging.
Yeah, that was awfully quiet for a moment there.
Yeah.
All right, well, okay, so my answer is, you'll see.
Yeah.
Fine. I'll take it.
Okay, I have a question. So we meet Butch, and he's a homicide detective, and he's very much like, just going through the motions in his life, and like honestly doesn't care. He's like the cop that breaks the rules, but like to get things done, like the right thing done.
He's the bad cop.
Yeah, and then we find out later on he gets fired for police brutality, and I feel like that's something that's very much prevalent in our time right now.
Yeah.
So how did you guys feel about that aspect?
I think that this sort of plays into the grittiness that I was talking about, of how he's definitely not a perfect guy, and I do like that the police here is not portrayed as like being perfect in all situation, and Butch is definitely a character who I guess sort of abuses his role a little bit, but then again you're like, but you understand where he's coming from as well, so it's kind of, there's no clean cut answer. I feel like it's I think the words police brutality are heavier in 2021 reading this book than they would have been in 2005 reading the book. Not that police brutality was not a thing, but because of the current conversations, I feel like it's difficult to divorce yourself from all that you think about when those words pop up type of thing. So I don't really know what to think. I feel like I just choose to tell myself that like, okay, this is a character thing. It's not, don't take it and make it into something it's not. Like, it's a character thing. It was just trying to show you something about Butch, that like his job, he's doing his job because I think he believes in what is right. And sometimes what is right is not what is legal. And if that's the case, he's gonna go down that route anyway, I think that's what that was trying to show about his character. It's like he doesn't care.
I agree with your opinion.
So I want to know, and I guess this is kind of adjacent to that, but how did you feel about this book opening up with the sexual assault of our main character, female character? Like, that is rough.
I feel like it was a little brutal to start off like that.
Yeah, it was. And I'm not someone that's a fan of, like, using female, I guess, brutality or, like, abuse against women or anyone, really, to start a series or start a book or, like, to entertain the readers. It's not something that I ever care about to read about, because I feel like, obviously, that's wrong, and you shouldn't be using scenes like that to start a series, or even just, like, to entertain readers or watchers or whoever is consuming this product. But I do feel like and this is gonna sound harsh, this book would not have, like, had anything, like, to start it if it wasn't for that. Like, there was nothing really, like, that event started everything in terms of, like, meeting everyone, like, connecting her with Butch.
Well, I agree and I disagree with that.
Okay.
Because I was trying to think about that too. I was like, why was this there? And I was like, okay, so how I guess the author sees it is that it was a way for Butch to be connected with the brothers in some capacity. Like, that was kind of the middle point between those two people. But I don't like that, because I'm like, Butch would have eventually, I think, found his way to the brothers through the murder of several prostitutes. I think it could have been done that way.
Yeah, okay.
And Beth could have been left out of it, because Beth was already going to meet Rath anyway. And Beth already knew Butch. So they would have met eventually in some capacity. But
their relationship started getting stronger as she started to confide in him because
of that, yes. But then I find issue with the fact that she... Again, like, we repeat this, trying not to read this with 2021 eyes.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's difficult not to notice that she then kind of never mentions it again. Like, it's kind of, she's traumatized for a night, and then everything's fine.
No.
Yeah, and, like, you would think that, like, a guy like Rath, big, long hair, dark, wears sunglasses indoors and outdoors, like, you would think that she would have been a little bit more scared following that assault. But then no, she's like, let's have sex on my couch right here, right now.
It brings it back to the idea that attempted rape was only used for a one and done type of situation. It was only there to entertain and get the ball rolling. Like, it didn't have any lasting effect.
Exactly. Like, that's what I'm finding an issue with. It's like, I wish she would have dealt with it. Like, it wouldn't be bothering me as much as it is used in the book if at least she would have continued to struggle with that.
Yeah.
Because then it doesn't feel as much like a plot device.
And then I think the relationship between her and Rath would have developed differently. Yeah. Like, it wouldn't feel rushed, or...
It would have been stronger, I think.
It would have been stronger, and, like, I would have felt for these two more and wanted them to be together more had he been the one standing next to her, helping her through this. You know what I mean? Whereas that wasn't happening. Also, during their first time, she was kind of under the influence, because, like, her... pheromones or whatever transition was happening, and she kind of wasn't herself. They had sex. He knew about it, and he was affected too. Like, I'll give him that much. But she certainly wasn't herself that first time. How do you feel about that?
I mean, okay,
crickets.
No. Okay, I was trying to see if I was going to answer, but then, like, I don't know. Okay, so how I saw it was, he kind of met his mate, I guess, for lack of a better word, and, like, experienced her, like, arousal right then and there. And
pheromones.
Apparently, when you're transitioning, it's very potent, and, like, it was hard for him to fight it off too. And he kind of did try, but then, like, he got lost in the moment, because he's like, oh my gosh, I found my one person. And it just went from there. So do I agree with how it happened? Maybe not, but he was also affected by everything that was going on at the same time.
Like, now that you girls mention it, like, when I was reading it, that's not something that came to mind. It's just, but it makes me wonder if the story would have just played out where the sexual assault didn't happen, if the story would have been okay without that in the beginning, and then just for them just for that to go into the scene where she's transitioning and then they happen quickly, they hook up.
Well, because it was already going to happen anyway, right? Because Darius had asked Rath to help her through it. So Rath was going to meet her anyways, and that was going to happen anyways.
I guess you could argue, like, it's just annoying, but, like, I guess you can argue the reason why, I guess, Butch was so involved with the sexual assault and all of that is because it kind of did connect him with Rath, because Butch lost his job by beating up Billy Riddle, thus making Rath grateful to Butch and kind of trusting him with certain situations.
Wasn't there something about Butch's sister?
Yeah.
Wasn't she kidnapped, murdered, something like that?
She was kidnapped, raped, and murdered, and he said not in that order, so we don't know what happened. But just that pushed him to be a cop, and, like, that kind of pushed him to, like, kind of lack happiness and, like, lack the will of survival, I guess you could say, until he meets Marissa. And then, I mean, like, it kind of bonded them, but I don't like that sexual assault bonded two males, like, it just doesn't, sit well with me.
Yeah. And, like, we say all of this, and, like, obviously, to me, this just shows how far the genre has come, essentially. It's like, you don't cancel those books for existing. They were written at a time where this was very common. It's not like the odd one out. So you can't fault the authors for writing within a genre that was doing this all over the place.
Agreed.
And I just find that actually really reassuring to see that, like, we're picking these things up now because it's changed so much and we wouldn't see that nowadays, and that's positive. That's a positive thing.
And I also think we should keep in mind, like, obviously the series isn't a light romance. It never portrayed itself as such. It's paranormal romance. It's dark, gritty. It has, like, a lot of aspects that might make you feel uncomfortable, and I think this book could have done with a warning, like a trigger warning. But back then, that wasn't really a common thing.
But who was putting trigger warnings in 2005?
No, exactly. It wasn't a common thing back then. But I think you should know going into that, like, this series gets dark and might get darker.
And you have to allow the author to grow themselves as well.
Yeah, of course.
Like, I'm sure that 15 books down the line, the conversations that are being had on page are completely different from this first book. There's no point, like, I don't know what, like, burning authors at the stake for their first book in the series that, like, was written ages ago. Like, this is not fair to them and to the genre,
Yeah. You know what we didn't talk about? Rath and his visual impairment.
True that.
We find out, like, I don't even know how far into the book that he's blind.
Not that very far.
Not very far, but we find out early on, but Beth doesn't find out until, like, their actual date at his mansion. Sorry, not his mansion, Darius's mansion. She finds out that he is basically blind, like, he's gonna be fully blind soon. But, like, despite all that, he, like, nothing's really stopped him. Like, he is, like, one of the best warriors out there. He's literally their king, and it's kind of sad. He only, like, is sad about it or, like, acknowledges it when he's faced with Beth and, like, knowing that he'll never actually know what she looks like. And, like, I thought that was really sad.
Oh, that just made me sad. I didn't think of that.
But I like how it shows the subtleties of it, because it's like, it's not true that everyone's that is considered blind is just can't see anything. Like, there's degrees of it, and I like that for him it's something that progresses over time and gets worse and worse. But I also like that he's blind for certain things, but then I believe he can see light.
Yeah, I think he can see light, and he can see general shapes.
So I do like that, it's important to see various representations of things like blindness.
I do wish that, how, I don't know if this is, like, spoiler towards the end of the book, but where the Virgin Scry gave him, like, a moment to see. So I would have liked for that moment to be, like, to see Beth.
I know.
Like, a little quick moment,
I didn't even think about that,
Yeah, I kind of wish that happened as well, but...
How do you feel about the scribed virgin sort of playing all the cards? She's like, she revived the father which this is a question I have. Like, what was the point of him accepting the deal when all he wanted was to meet his daughter, but then he's revived?
Because he gets to live and be in her life. So I think he saw that as
but he won't remember her.
He won't remember.
So it's like, what's the point? Don't accept the deal if you won't remember her, you won't know she's your daughter. Like, how does that make any sense?
But I think, like, I don't know, I've never been a parent, but, like, maybe the idea of, like, being in her life and, like, being, like, having influence in her life means more to him than just, like, quickly visiting her, like, in a dream.
But
or
does
whatever.
he know for sure he's gonna have a place in her life? Or is he just coming back to life and, like, not knowing who the fuck he is, where he is, who anyone is? Like, how does it work?
Does he come back to be like a villain in her life type of thing?
I feel like he could be.
Okay,
Yeah.
not a villain, but you'll see. And don't forget, he had to also pay a price. Because remember, the scribe virgin was like, you're gonna have to give up something. And he's like, I don't care. I want to be in her life. So you will see.
I'm getting flashbacks to when we were reading the early books in Immortals After Dark, and every question was ending with Seff saying, you'll see.
Oh my gosh, do you want me to tell you? He comes in book 2. You'll see him.
Okay, fine. I just felt like it was a bad deal. Like, I wouldn't have taken it. Like, you're dead. Stay dead.
Okay, so that's a question. You wouldn't have asked? If you would have died and had a moment to come back to be in your family's life, you wouldn't take it? You girls wouldn't?
If I can't remember them, no.
I mean, it gives you a second chance at life.
How heartbreaking is it when you realize that you were around people that you loved at one point and you can't remember anything?
Okay, so then I have a question to that. So if you could bring Darius back like the way he was, would you? Or are you excited to see what's in store for him for his new, I guess, incarnation? Like his new life? Like, would you like scrap everything that happens in the series just to have Darius as he was back originally?
I think I would have wanted him to come back at least for a moment so she can meet
Her dad.
So he can meet
So
Beth.
you would want him to come back like as old Darius, or would you want him like to meet the new incarnation of him, like the new version of him?
I think old
Okay.
Darius.
Okay, I feel like person me would say old Darius just for the feels.
Yeah.
But I can say that, like, writer me is like, it's more interesting if it's new Darius and, like, exploring what the hell that means for the story.
Okay.
I can see
Yeah.
why she did it.
Yeah.
I can see it. But I'm like, but I wanted them, to have a moment, because, like,
I know.
it's so emotional when she goes into his room and she, like, sees all the pictures that she's
Yeah.
in, and, like, that he really did follow as much as he could of her life.
Mhm.
Like, he was there as much as he could.
He even sent Fritz to her graduation.
That killed me.
Yeah.
That killed me. I was like, oh my god. Freaking love Fitz. Like, he was, everything she did, he was like, oh my god, she just looked at me, she just touched my hand.
He's so cute.
Like, everything was an honor. Like, she
Yeah.
sneezes on you and you're like, oh my god.
Well, I mean, like, for him, it's like he doesn't have like, a family or kids or anything. Like, he's watched this one girl grow up. And, like, I'm pretty sure he even got sent to, like, dance recitals. Actually, no, she went to school. So, like, he went to every event that he could have attended. Yes, she was an orphan, and that meant in foster care. But, like, they still checked up on her to see which house she was in. And, like, he had a whole list. And he's like, oh, that house wasn't good. This house was okay. And, like, Beth knew that people knew of her. And she knew that people knew her. And watched out for her.
What about you, Seff? What would you do? What would you rather between the two options?
For me, it's not fair because I kind of know what happens.
True.
I really like his new version, so
Ooh. Wait. Do we get, like, sexy Darius? Like, do we get Darius's love story? Like, does he get someone?
You might.
Seff.
Okay, fine, yes, you do. You do.
Okay. I can get behind this daddy. Okay. Interesting. What
Yeah.
book? If you say 9, I'm jumping off a window.
No, I really think it's like 8 or 9. Okay, so like it goes from like, okay, so the first 6 are obviously like the brothers, so that would be Rath, Rage, Zsadist, Butch. Butch doesn't really count, but Butch. And then there's Vicious, and then Fury. And then after that, it's like the other characters that are introduced. And I can't say who they are yet, because, I mean, I could, but then.
Well, I wanted to know how you guys feel about the Butch and Marissa romance. I was into it.
You're into it?
I'm into it. Are you guys into it?
I mean, I liked the book when I was reading it the first time, but, like, we'll see. I'm curious to see if my thoughts have changed on that book.
I'm feeling so much hatred coming off the screen right now. Like, you're so annoyed with this character, and I don't really
Marissa
understand
is
why.
so annoying.
Like, I could understand why the first couple chapters, but then towards the end, I was like, I don't see why they hate this character so much.
Wait, you find Butch annoying?
I find both of them kind of annoying. But that's just like me.
Well, this is why they're perfect together.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't necessarily mean I would ever revisit their story, despite it. Like, it was still a really well-rounded story, but like, okay, I don't want to spoil anything, but I kind of will. But I wanted Butch and V to be a thing.
Oh, I heard something, I think. I don't know. I don't remember who said that, but that she might have intended to make them the MM couple, and then she kind of...
She backed out.
Skedaddled out of that idea.
Yeah.
And then that's why she brought in the other couple.
I don't know if that's why she brought them in. I think originally she always, like, maybe she wrote the other couple in, and, like, they're always going to be a thing. But, like, V and Butch have, like, things going on. And then, like, even in his book, like, there's just, like, the tension is there, and you're like...
Interesting.
It's confusing because, like, obviously the Marissa and Butch thing is, like, introduced in this first book.
Yeah.
At the same time as, like, V and Butch. So, and I get it. Like, I was like, oh, it's interesting. Like, they're friends.
Yeah.
Like, they get along very well. Like, they slept in the same bed, woke up, didn't remember anything.
Yeah.
I was like, okay. But then there's the Marissa thing. So, I don't know what she was going for. And, like, the Marissa thing is so obvious compared to the V thing.
Yeah.
I don't know that she was necessarily setting out for those two to ever be a thing. Like,
I don't know. Yeah, that's the thing. I don't know because, like, maybe it was 2005 and maybe she just didn't know if her readers, because she was like, obviously this was like, she only got a 3-book deal and she wanted, she only had 3 books and she wanted to make sure she got Zsadist in. So I don't think Zadist's book was supposed to even be book 3. I just think she wanted his story told so much that he was part of the 3-book deal, and then she just ended up getting approved for more books. So I think she was more nervous that, like, maybe the audience might not want an MM romance, especially with Butch and V. And then, like, maybe she just, like, hinted at Marissa at first, and, like, that was obviously probably gonna be the end game, unless, like, you know, she decided to go the other way with Butch and V. But
also, like, it's possible that it was purely unintentional. Like, sometimes characters in books have unintentional sexual chemistry between them. Like, Lothair and my man Declan had a thing, all right? Like, it's unintentional. You know that the author didn't mean for it to be
I'm trying so hard not to
reader,
spoil,
like,
yeah.
I am picking up these signals. You know what I mean? So it might have been that as well.
I mean, you gotta read book 4.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Yeah,
okay.
I just, like, it's not like read between the lines. It's very much there.
Fine.
Especially on V's side.
Does V end up with a woman or a man?
Oh, V ends up with a woman, and I love V and his girl.
He might be bisexual, you know, like, that's allowed.
No, he is bisexual.
Oh, okay, well, there you go.
I believe he is. I don't know. I think that's confirmed. But yeah, but that's to say, like, I love V and his book. Like, his book was amazing, made me cry, gave me everything, and he's also into BDSM, so if that's something you're interested in, he will provide on that front.
Okay, so BDSMV. Okay, I hear you.
I'm giving you guys little teasers to, like, maybe you might want to continue this series.
Well, I am going to continue on. Like, I feel like I have to. I have to give it till Zsadist.
Yeah, at least till Zsadist.
And then I can make
And
up
then
my
if you're
mind.
curious about reading about Butch and V's, maybe, like, almost their type romance, but not really, maybe book 4. But then you also want to read V's book. So maybe up to book 5.
And then by that point, maybe book 12 or 25.
No, honestly, like, for me, it's the first 5 books. Maybe 6. Me and Fury's book kind of, like, have a hate-love relationship. Like, I like it, but I don't like it. I love it. Sometimes I don't like it. I don't know. But, like, the first 6 is
solid.
where it's at.
Solid arc.
Yeah, they're a solid set.
Hey everyone, Editor Marge here to say that sadly we suffered some technical difficulties with this episode. S's audio got corrupted for whatever reason and we tried everything to recover it, but we didn't manage it, obviously. So if you don't hear her for the rest of the episode, that is why, as she was there with us. We could hear her, but you can't, unfortunately, so you are missing out on an amazing conversation about the reverse harem book that S was reading at the time. It sounded really wild. So I'm sad that you can't hear about it. But she does mention it in our upcoming Catch Up and Chill episode, which should be coming out next week. So do not worry, it is coming. This was just kind of a preview in which she was kind of teasing some spoilery bits about the book. So, you know, you won't get that in the Catch Up and Chill, but you will get, you know, a taste of what it's like. There was also a bit about Zsadist, and we were saying how excited we were for his book. So here you go. Now you know that, because you wouldn't otherwise. And I hope that this won't impact your enjoyment of this episode too much and that you'll like the rest of it anyway. Yeah, I mean, we're sorry. I wish we could have found a solution to this, but unfortunately we did not in time anyway. So yeah, apologies, and yeah, let's get back into it, shall we? Can we quickly segue into a scene that I really liked, which was the mating ceremony?
Yeah,
I really liked her take on it. So, like, essentially it's kind of like a wedding, I guess, but I really liked the part where the brothers were carving Beth's name into his back.
And she's like, I wish my name was shorter.
Yeah, but then, like, I really liked that, and how they were asking, like, who's your, what's the name of your Leland or whatever, Leland?
His Shalane.
And he had to repeat Elizabeth, like, over and over again. Like, it had the intensity that it needed to have, which sometimes mating ceremonies, I feel like they are a little bit of a letdown, because, like, there's hype around it, and then you're like, oh, this is it? This is all there is? But I liked it a lot.
I will say that I loved the singing part, and I loved my man having the most beautiful voice ever.
That Zsadist was singing. Yes.
I literally looked at my book. I remember this so vividly, and I started screaming. I was like, oh my gosh, of course he could sing, but his eyes look dead, and my man has a broken soul, but he sings like an angel.
Okay, so let's go into the monster.
So what do you think the monster of the story is?
Well, a little one that I found at some point, and I don't remember who was saying that, and I think it might have been Rath, but I'm not 100% sure on that front. But someone was talking about the battle between your baser instincts as a vampire and not fully submitting to them, like not fully giving in to becoming this vampire being and like sort of retaining some of your humanity. And I do think that this is something that all the guys probably struggle with, like even Rath to a certain extent, like Rath doesn't want to kill people just for the sake of killing people. He will do it if he has to, but he seems to be struggling with that. Like, he doesn't want to give in to just purely being evil for the sake of it. That was like a little one that I picked up at some point, and again, I'm sorry, I don't remember who said that, but I feel like it might have been Rath at some point.
Well, for me, for Rath, I had like past traumas forming fears and self-doubt. So we know, I guess midway through the book, that when Rath was a pre-transition vampire, he was considered, I guess, smaller and just, I don't know, just not strong. his family was brutally murdered while he was hiding behind a wall his father had put him in before the attack. So this was the Lesters way back when coming to attack the royal vampire family. He watched his parents die, and he feels like he let them down because he didn't do anything, and he didn't do anything to fight and protect them. So obviously that meant he didn't pay attention to his lack of strength nor the lack of training he would have had at that point, and he obviously would have died in 2 seconds. But it kind of made him feel like a failure and doubts himself when it comes to leading his people. That's why years and years and years have passed, and he still hasn't stepped up and became the king for his people. Yeah, and he just doesn't even also know how to rule because of his parents dying so young in his life. So he struggles with that as well, and he still to this day doesn't feel like he isn't the cause of his parents' death. And he even tells Beth that, and Beth is like, you were young, you were a kid.
Yeah, he was convinced she would leave him when she learned that he hid away and didn't make a sound so that they wouldn't find him.
And he also tells Beth, despite her saying you're not at fault, he's like, you can tell me as much as you want that I wasn't at fault, but I believe that I am at the end of the day. So yeah, he's still struggling with that, and it still caused him to reluctantly agree to be the king. So yeah, that was his monster, I think, for me.
Which will hopefully have repercussions in the next books, of that decision. What about Beth? The thing is with Beth, I don't feel she got great character development in this book. And
no, so
when it comes to monsters, I don't think that she has many. I feel like if we're not necessarily thinking about the character themselves, but more how they are created, I feel like we discussed the fact that her struggles and what she goes through with assault and everything was kind of just used as a plot device. That's a monster within the romance genre, I feel like. But I don't think that there's much to her, and I feel like Marissa had more character development. And for me, I liked Marissa's small but still significant journey of realizing her own self-worth, and that she's not gonna stay with Rath. She's done with this. She values herself more than that, and it was an interesting little arc, just because it's brief and from a side character, it doesn't mean it's not important. I liked to see that from her. So that was a small one, she overcame that. She's looking for love elsewhere.
She's single and she's ready to mingle.
Yes, girl.
For me, I still had with Beth past trauma still forming I guess fears and self-doubt with her, because she was always in the foster system, and it kind of scarred her. She had really bad situations and really bad experiences.
But then, did that ever come up in the story, really?
No, she just mentions it, and even Mr. Fritz mentions it, and I guess it alludes to the part of her story where she didn't really form connections really with people, and she kind of was a lone wolf, and relationships were not easy to form with her. Obviously, yes, a lot of it was due to the lack of sexual attraction to people because of her transition.
Yeah.
But I think it caused her to have inner doubts and just a intense loneliness, because she didn't even have any friends really. And I don't know if that was due to her foster situation and her experiences there, or if it was just being not of the human species.
Yeah, and I guess in a way, learning about everything that her dad did behind the scenes sort of helped her realize that she was never truly alone. She felt alone, but she actually wasn't during that time. And I think that maybe she found comfort in that thought of there was someone with me along the way, someone who cared.
Yeah. And I also had lack of self-preservation, because Rath was a hottie, but there was so much evidence proving that he was a murderer or even a drug dealer, and this girl was he's hot, and we just had great sex, and now I'm gonna go with him, and that was it. Of course, thank God he wasn't any of those things.
I mean, you can't blame her for doing that.
No,
you can't, but You have, like, I'm sorry, but Beth is the girl in a horror movie who dies first. She just is.
No, you are right. She goes where the hottie is.
But can't blame her, because, like, probably me too. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, she maybe could have put up a little bit of a fight, you know, or just been like, hey, dude, I literally have just met you. Maybe we shouldn't, I don't know. But then again, you know, you do you, boo.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? She's a single woman and she's going through a transition. She didn't know about it then. And, like, you know what? If you're feeling attracted to one man, just do it, girl. Like, what's stopping you? I mean, sure, he might be a murderer and a drug dealer, but you know what?
And he literally just, like, appeared in your home and, like, is very tall, dark, and mysterious. Right? And you're like, yeah. See,
it just proves, girls, you don't even need to leave your home to meet your soulmate.
Oh, the dream. Well, okay, so we're done with the monster?
Yeah.
Okay. So we don't know yet what we're going to do with this. It might turn into a series, it might not, but if it does turn into a series, don't expect it to be like we did the Immortals After Dark books, so like one every 2 weeks type of deal. It will probably be like one here, one 5 years from now, and then...
Okay, no. Maybe one every few weeks.
Yeah, like don't expect something too consistent as far as these releases. Yeah, I mean, I hope you enjoyed it. If you read this book and you want to let us know how you felt about it, please feel free to reach us online. You can find us on Instagram at Romancing the Monsters Podcast, also on Twitter at not at all. The RTM Pod. And you can also email us at romancingthemonsterspodcast@gmail.com. We're on YouTube under the same name if you prefer that format to listen to podcasts. Also, there are captions on there if you need or want them. And lastly, you can find me on both Twitter and Instagram at Foes and Lovers.
And you can find me on both Twitter and Instagram at But This Book.
And you can find me, Seff, on both Instagram and Twitter at Pros with Woes. And also, please feel free to leave us a review or rate us on Apple Podcasts, on Google, on SoundCloud, on literally like any podcast program or wherever you find podcasts. Please feel free to rate or review us. It honestly means the world anytime we get a review or a rating. So yeah, if you have the time and would like to rate us, please go ahead.
We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.